you mentioned, the fabric of society and the social contract. And,
Yes.
a lot of people talk about that, but they talk about them as sort of these vague things. And, the fabric of society. What is that? It's our contracts. It's our agreements with one another. It's how we relate to each other. And, it more often than not, a contract involves money. And so our money is a crucial part of the fabric of society. And if you just hand that over to a government that has never demonstrated that it can be trusted with anything, let alone the fabric of society, you get what we're dealing with right now.
Right.
And it's that simple, guys.
What up, Vigilantes? I'm here with Chris, former founder and CEO of Equibit. Chris, how are you today?
I'm very good, Raf. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. And I want to talk to you about many things. You are someone that has a lot of experience dealing with regulators and maybe even the deep state, if you want to call that, people that harass people within crypto. You have experience with that. And I want to talk to you about your experience, maybe things that you've been through, and maybe so that maybe you can shine some light as to what entrepreneurs may be going through in crypto.
Yeah, so maybe I'll start with a bit of background about myself. Shortly after getting out of university and starting my career at a professional services company called Deloitte & Touche, who I'm sure some people will be familiar with, I got involved with the Mises Institute of Canada. I served as the treasurer. I was also on the board. I set up a continuing education program for professionals where they could actually get credit for studying Austrian economics through the institute.
Nice.
So that was quite well received. Spent a lot of time, in meetings with guys like Eric Sprott. He was one of our chief funders. I've got a nice picture of myself with Redmond Weisenberger, the executive director of the Mises Institute, standing in front of his big, giant, extra large pizza-sized gold coin that he has up in his office there. It's more of a museum than an office, really.
That's awesome. Is it a real solid gold coin?
It's 100 kilograms of solid 5/9 pure gold.
Wow.
It's the purest gold ever produced by the Canadian Mint, and I think they only made 4 of them, and he's got 1.
Nice. That's pretty cool.
So it was, it's one of those things where you just see it, and it's so much in one space that you'll never see like anything like that in your life again. So I had to get a picture. I'll share it with you. You can show your viewers.
Let's do it. Yeah, send it over. So what's the story of Equibit? I mean, well, you and I have talked about it in the past. You shared it with me, but I think you've mentioned that you really wanted to share your story as a warning to others, and also as a means to kind of bring light into the darkness, right?
Definitely. So I started Equibit shortly after working as the CFO of a securities brokerage. And being the guy running the back office of that company exposed me to a lot of the more opaque corners of how this business is run. And I'm sure most of the people in crypto are familiar with central banking and how that system works. But the securities industry is structured in very much the same way, because we're all just moving intangible values around. And I've got, you've got something. Oh, I've got my daughter coming to say hello. Hi, baby.
Hey, congratulations on having a beautiful family, Chris.
Oh, thank you. Come. Oh, no, she wants to go back to watching her Finding Dory.
Hey, cheers to you, man. That's super base, man. Having a beautiful family, being a libertarian. Yeah, it's incredible. Congratulations.
Yeah, well, I'm always the kind of guy who wants to do things I'm told not to do, and having children is a bad thing apparently these days. So naturally, I had to.
Awesome.
But
Congrats.
thank you, thank you. Oh, they're wonderful. She's almost 4, and the latest edition is about 20 months.
Okay, right on. Wow, young family. Super cool.
Yeah.
I just love how crypto gives us freedom. You know what I'm saying? And to see young families around crypto I think it's the coolest thing. So
yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Yes.
Yeah, you're welcome. So back to I guess the structure of the securities industry, because this is the important thing to understand. So with money, we have banks and central banks and money markets. And in securities, we have securities markets or exchanges, but we also have a central bank equivalent called depository. And we even have an additional layer called a transfer agent. And the depositories and the transfer agents kind of work in tandem to accomplish what a central bank would do, because central banks are the issuers of all of the money, and they technically hold all of the money as well, because everything that's in your checking account is in turn in the bank's checking account at the Fed or at the Central Bank of Canada or whatever the central bank happens to be. And so this structure of one person having a liability to the next person, and this pyramiding of liabilities is replicated in the securities industry. So when you have securities at a brokerage, you don't own those securities any more than you own the money in your bank account.
Wow.
The securities broker has you listed as a creditor for a certain set of securities that you think is in your account.
Wow.
But those securities are actually that broker has its own account with a transfer agent, who in turn has an account at a depository. And so this all rolls up the pyramid to in effect centralize the ownership of all publicly traded securities. And so in the United States, most people, if you buy or sell something on a stock exchange, you never actually have legal title to those securities. They're owned by a partnership called Seed & Co., which is kind of a subsidiary of something called DTCC. And DTCC is like one of the central banking type entities in the securities industry. But
I've heard of this. I've read about these entities, and I've read that they control everything, like the database for all of these securities.
Yeah, it's exactly that. So the legal title to all the securities on a stock exchange is held by one of these custodians who has a liability to the brokers, who has a liability to you. And the people who are in charge of keeping track of the changes in that, the endpoint, who's the ultimate beneficial owner is typically the term used. Those people are called transfer agents, and they're glorified bookkeepers and a mailroom, because they will route your dividend checks and your shareholder meeting notices and all of that kind of stuff to and from the shareholders and the issuers. And so we had an industry ripe for disruption with the very same technology that was causing mayhem in the banking industry. And so sometime around 2014, which is when I was working at that brokerage, is when I had the idea of transplanting the Bitcoin technology into the securities industry. We had to do a ton of extra work because there was a lot more that needed to be added to it. We needed a communication system. We needed also some way for issuers to restrict the transferability of securities.
So was your startup, was your company on chain? Was the data held on chain?
Yes, it was all on chain. It was a fork of Bitcoin.
Nice.
And we re-engineered the code in a couple of different ways. We changed the mining production curve from a 50 and then 25 and then 12 and a half. We changed it to a bell curve because that's what an actual mine produces as.
So that's so you use the same Bitcoin code, but you didn't use Bitcoin, of course, because they didn't. I mean, I wanted to do things like that on Bitcoin, but we had a civil war because of it. They wouldn't allow me to do it on Bitcoin. So I had to also, for a while there, look elsewhere. So yeah,
Yeah.
so you were saying, so then you guys forked Bitcoin.
We founded Equibit back in about late 2015, and we found an angel investor to put some money in the company, and we hired our developers, and we started changing the Bitcoin code base. We changed the hash from SHA-2 to SHA-3 because we figured that was going to be the new industry standard. It was more secure. It's supposedly quantum resistant. We'll see. The other thing I liked about it is that it was actually a very efficient on hardware. So like an ASIC. And this is where I think our philosophy differed from a lot of other development companies, because they wanted ASIC resistant chips or ASIC resistant algorithms. I didn't necessarily see that as any advantage, because we didn't see more miner decentralization in existing coins that were, supposedly ASIC resistant.
Right.
And really, you can make an ASIC for any algorithm. It doesn't matter what it is. Yeah. And you can throw up as many roadblocks as you want. But if it's economically viable to make an ASIC for any algorithm, it's going to eventually hit the market. So rather than try and fight or forestall this trend, we went the other way, and we just embraced it. We said, yes, we want our miners to be running specialized hardware, because you look at anything that happens today, everything is specialized. Everybody does everything.
Markets specialized. That's the way markets work.
Yeah,
and there's a division of labor for that reason. Yes, correct.
Yeah, and people who invest in specialized hardware are then invested in the success of the coin. They can't just turn around and abandon it whenever they feel like it. You can't merge mine or do all these things where you have these wild swings in your network hash rate just because of something that happened on an exchange that day. So we didn't want to attract necessarily those kinds of attitudes and personalities to the project. We wanted people who really wanted to invest for the long haul. And I think that may have been one of the things that attracted the ire of the deep state, was because that, here was a group of people who were building something that could be really disruptive. And like, this industry that we were planning to disrupt, this is a $10 billion a year industry. They process $3 to $4 quadrillion of transactions annually.
And you know what? That is exactly what Bitcoin was created for, was to disrupt not just money, but also ownership. And so
absolutely.
And I completely agree with you. It's not just not your keys, not your crypto. It's also not your keys, not your security. And that's what they don't want people to know. They do not want people to know that we have the technology to unseat big tech, to unseat the Securities Exchange Commission. We don't need them. What takes them a week to sit down in boardrooms takes us 10 minutes on the slowest blockchain.
That's
you were saying, yes, yeah.
That's it. So yeah, here we are, trying to build this thing that's going to essentially eliminate a $10 billion a year industry, because we weren't trying to be a better custodian or a better transfer agent. We wanted a world where neither of those exist. Right. And I think that's what frightened them. Not only because that's what we wanted to do, but we were actually successful at doing it, because in I think it was about April or May 2018, we uploaded a video to YouTube of us performing a cross-chain atomic swap without ever leaving the wallet app, which to this day nobody has done. There's no wallet out there that will negotiate and execute automatically a cross-chain atomic swap, Bitcoin for Monero or Bitcoin for Ether. Like, that just isn't being done right now. You have, the closest thing you have to that is DEXs, which is a smart contract running on Ethereum where you can flip around ERC20 tokens. And okay, but most of the value is not locked up in the crypto ecosystem, is not in ERC20 tokens. It's in multiple chains. It's in Bitcoin, it's in Ether, it's in Monero, it's in a gazillion other, pick the top 20 coins.
It's really in us as human beings. And there will be a protocol that will shine above the rest, that will bring forth all that power and energy from each and every one of us. And that protocol will not be stopped. And we're this close. We're extremely close, man. Mm-hmm. It could be Darrow. It could be another one. I don't know. It could be, It could come from the original Bitcoin protocol.
Well, the privacy coins, I'm with you with my interest in these privacy coins. We didn't have, Darrow or Pirate Chain when we were working on Equibit, but when I was building it, it really was my dream coin, except for the fact that it wasn't fully private. Zcash was out, and I was looking very closely at zero knowledge proofs. And that was our long range goal, was to get Equibit launched and running, and then figure out how to bring in zero knowledge proofs and keep the whole thing still running. Because that is now the ultimate crypto. We've come with full privacy on all the time. You've solved the fungibility problem, because the authorities can no longer red flag coins and follow them around from one address to the other and just say at one point in time, we're just going to ban all of these addresses because at one point in their history, they were involved in a heist.
So when you started, this was around what year? My question really regards, when did you first source capital for your startup?
Yeah, so we initially started we opened up our pre-mine, and as you typically fund these kinds of projects back then, we set aside 6% for the pre-mine, and we started selling that. We parceled it out, and we sold the first parcel in early 2017, and that is right as we were doing that is when our problems began. Now, in December 2016, we actually went to the regulators, and we laid out the whole system, we laid out the plan, and we asked them, do you think our coin is a security? And they said, go talk to your lawyers. What do your lawyers say? Typical bureaucrat response. They don't want to put anything. They don't want to put anything out there. They never want to say anything. They just want to threaten you with stuff.
Right.
So naturally, but even before that meeting, we had already talked to the top securities law firm in the country. That's Davies, Ward, Phillips, and Weinberg. And they didn't think it was a security. We were doing exactly what the Ethereum ICO did, and the SEC didn't think that was a security either. Now, they seem to have changed their opinion of this based on the library lawsuit. But, as I think your viewers are probably noticing right now, the securities regulators are just making things up as they go, because they have a mandate to take over the industry. And that's kind of the point I think that I want to get across, is that once somebody, we initially went to the Ontario Securities Commission, and they basically said, we don't think we have anything to say to you here. They literally told us, keep going. So we did. And as soon as we started raising money, what we think happened at this point was the Canadian intelligence service called CSIS swatted us. They analyzed what we were building, saw that it would disrupt their financial surveillance system, and decided they don't want this coming out. And then they sicked the Ontario Securities Commission on us, because when OSC started coming at us, they're like, oh, well, this is an anonymous tip, which, I think everybody knows at this point that the police or the regulators don't actually respond to you when you call in. Like, just look at Enron or FTX. I mean, everybody knew these were frauds. Look at BitConnect or Plus Token. Everybody knew these were frauds as they were going on, and we were all screaming from the hilltops, regulators, do something. This is going to burn down to the ground, and a lot of people are going to get hurt. And they didn't do anything, and it burned down to the ground exactly the way they wanted it to. Right. I mean, it's such a joke. 3 months after BitConnect completely collapsed, you couldn't put money into it at this point. It was gone. 3 months after, the Ontario Securities Commission issues an investor advisory saying, oh, you shouldn't put money in that thing.
Wow.
Go figure.
Yeah. So it's funny, like right now, this crook of Sam Bankman is still being paraded amongst politicians. He's someone that gets to speak at conferences to this day after what just happened last week. There's even like apologetic pieces in the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. There's also talk about him running for president someday. Jeff made a joke. He's like, well,
he's perfect.
The biggest crook.
He's perfect
for them. Yes.
The bigger the criminal you are and the more leveraged you can be, the higher you go in that system.
It's ridiculous. Whereas you have someone like Ross Ulbricht in a prison serving 2 life sentences for hosting a website.
Exactly. And God bless Ross for doing what he did. And that judge is going to get what's coming to her.
Yeah. It's everything's in God's hands for sure. And that's something that, I don't mean to get spiritual or over the top on this, but the reality is, man, is that there is a spirit to all of this. It's humanity's yearning for freedom, peace, prosperity throughout the ages that finally found a way out through technology. And so, it's a privilege to be talking to an entrepreneur like you that has been not just, in the typical, struggle of sourcing capital and launching a startup, but you actually created something that was disruptive, something that they did not like, the opposite of a Sam Bankman-Fried, right? Yeah. And that's very commendable. And thank you for doing that. Thank you for honestly, for having the balls to come out here and share that with us, because what I think it's happening is that, like, what you experience, you're a pioneer. And what you did is like first generation in trying to disrupt them. Things are going to happen in the not so distant future where similar companies are going to be offering the world, and you can't even call them companies, networks are going to be offering the world what you did in a way that they can't stop. And that we're this close to that happening. So, you coming here and talking to us about this helps everyone around listening to know what to be on the lookout for. So if someone wanted to jump in and disrupt the same space that you disrupted with Equibit, to the point that the lizards got up in a tizzy and went after you and harassed your family, they swatted your house, what words of advice would you give these entrepreneurs that are like considering disrupting the same space?
Watch your back, because we went through a hell of a time. The company was infiltrated. We had code lost or stolen or destroyed. My wife was drugged at a crypto conference in Las Vegas.
Damn.
We were singled out and searched at the airport. We've had our home networks broken into or backdoored by the router that Rogers insists on having there. They don't let you use your own router anymore. So yeah, there is definitely, what I experienced fully convinced me of the truth that there are suppressed inventions and dead inventors out there, people who were onto something that was going to be very disruptive to incumbent industries. And, we see lots of people who work on energy technologies who are dead under mysterious circumstances. There are people working in the crypto space who are working on things that are also dead under mysterious circumstances. The latest one we have is the one of the founders of MakerDAO. Yep.
Shout out to him and his family. He's someone that I've never met him in person, but he and I see things very eye to eye. But he's also and we really saw the situation in this. We even surrounded ourselves around the same social circles, actually, in crypto. And what he knew is coming out right now, which is that Alameda Research was literally washing crypto, as we all know, but they are also the main ones behind the wrapped BTC on Ethereum. They were the ones that were minting the most wrapped BTC and Ethereum. So this goes deep. You know, the thing is that all these banksters came into crypto, and they confused people into thinking that they were getting into crypto through them, but in reality, they were just getting into a banking environment where they were using crypto as another asset that they can play with as banksters.
Yeah, so, and it's the same old games. It's the same old games. I mean, you know, just like you have fractional reserve banking, you have fractional reserve crypto exchanges now, and FTX is just the latest example in a line of exchanges that have gone bust because they borrowed out or lent out their client funds. And that's fractional banking in a nutshell, is just lending out funds that don't belong to you because, you know, somewhere along the line you decided, oh, well, this money is just sitting there and it could be doing something else. And, you know, screw my customers who are telling me to let it sit there. I want to make something off of it because then I'm just going to keep it all to myself. And it's greed piled on with dishonesty and just a complete lack of integrity in terms of when you go out and deal with people, because, you know, especially with the volatility of crypto and the things that go on in the industry, how could you ever in a second think that this was going to work for more than, 5 minutes? Because, we all know how quickly the market can move against you. And to that end, actually, it is quite possible that the crash that we saw in crypto, it may have been due to the collapse of FTX, but only in part, because the very same day that the FTX collapse story broke, the Department of Justice put out a press release confirming that they have seized over 50,000 Bitcoin from the Silk Road thief. But if you read the press release in detail, they actually seized those Bitcoin almost to the day a year before. So back in November 2011 is when they seized it. And they put this guy through the court system. And the Friday, he pleads guilty to all charges. So at that point, the DOJ has secured their rights to that Bitcoin because they've got the guilty plea. The trial's over. On Monday, they put the press release out. And on Monday is exactly when that price starts crashing. Now, there's a researcher called Mr. E. He's on Twitter, and he's been digging into this, and he served them with Freedom of Information Act requests. And first they responded saying that they were going to need an indeterminate amount of time to respond to this inquiry, because he asked them, do you still have the BTC? Yes or no? And that was all he wanted, was confirmation of whether they had it or not. And they said
yes.
Yeah. And they said they needed it. They needed not only the 30 days that they get on the statute. The statute lets them have 30 days to respond to any Freedom of Information Act request. Not only did they say they not need that they would need more than the additional 10 days time that they could claim, meaning that, it could take forever for us to say yes or no to this question. So, it's not like, I was an auditor professionally for 6 years. And if you need 40 plus days to answer the question, do you have the cash you say you have? That's just not acceptable. And so sure enough, within a day or two after Mr. E posts the DOJ's initial response for the claim of the time, the next day they respond saying, we're refusing to answer.
Wow. Okay, so yeah, I've heard of this mystery guy. I've been following him.
So
he's pretty saucy.
It seems, yeah, he is. He doesn't hold back. That's for sure.
He's not holding back.
And yeah, so somebody dumped 50,000 Bitcoin on November 7th and 8th and 9th.
Damn.
And it wasn't Sam Bankman-Fried.
See, if it's not happening on chain, you should not be in it. And so, okay, let me ask you a couple questions regarding Equibit so that we can dissect the situation that you found yourself in a little better. So you offered a product into the market and you created a blockchain, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, mineable blockchain.
A mineable blockchain. But the primary use case of that blockchain was the business, right? The business that you had, right?
Yeah, the business case was this was a blockchain for securities issuers and investors so that they could interface directly. So as an issuer.
But unfortunately, you were a centralized entity that created the blockchain and we're the primary use case for this blockchain.
Yeah.
So it was easy to point out, this is who we have to go to.
And so the strategy was, we have to destroy the product or we have to destroy the company before they release it. And that's exactly what happened mere months before we were able to release it.
So this is the secret sauce, and please add to this if you think that there's something missing. For the future, if anyone wants to make anything truly disruptive or game-changing in any aspect of the market, it needs to be obviously decentralized, open source, on-chain, interoperable with other applications on-chain, because by the nature of it being on-chain and open source, it's also that code is interoperable with anyone else to build on that blockchain. And fifth would be for that to be anonymous or private by default, especially if you're doing something, as disruptive as what you're doing, right? As what you were doing with Equibit. So again, that's anonymous, open source, interoperable, decentralized, and on-chain. Anything else you would like to add to that secret sauce? Because
if you can avoid doing an ICO, or you can do an ICO without ever revealing who you are or having to set up an entity, which you can't really do anymore, at least not legally, your fundraising options are going to be very limited. Either way, be very, very, very careful about who you work with. And not only they could start out squeaky clean, which is where everybody was, but the turncoat in our company only became one because he was in the process of becoming a Canadian citizen.
Oh.
And so CSIS took him into their offices, we think, and threatened that process. Wouldn't it be a shame if you had to go back to Russia, which he did not do. Or did not want. And so, not long, basically right after that meeting he had with them, off he went to Russia to sell off a business interest that he still had, and then came back here and at first tried to get a promotion into what he called the inner circle of the company. And when we got that email, we kind of, I was there with some of the other management at the company, and we looked at each other and we're like, he's writing the core code. Like he is the inner circle. He's writing the core. So whatever CSIS wanted, they didn't get, because he immediately gave himself away. And only days after him asking for a promotion, he quits.
So was this code from your company proprietary?
We hadn't open sourced it yet because we hadn't started mining it yet. We wanted to avoid, for as long as possible, the need to do any hard forks. We didn't want to rush out with a coin release and then come out with hard fork after hard fork after hard fork as we layered in the actual functionality. We were months away from launching with a fully functioning custodian and transfer agent blockchain that was mineable. And so unfortunately, that all got kiboshed. And we managed to rebuild the coin and release it, and miners started piling on. But other insiders, other potential agents, they sabotaged that release because they tied the network together to a single computer. And as soon as they took that computer offline, the network collapsed.
So I'm just brainstorming here with you. And I think that the way to do something like this in the future would be for that the network already be existing, for that network itself to already have a culture of open source, interoperable, on-chain, maybe even anonymous or private as much as possible, a lot of privacy tools on that network, and for it to be interoperable. So you have all of these constitutive makeup that you can grab onto, be part of a network that does not need your business to thrive. Then you, since there's a culture of open source development that's on chain, everyone can, like Legos, build on top of each other. And if you can do it in a way that's private, then that's unstoppable. You see what I'm saying? So what I'm trying to say is, like, we moving forward in the future in crypto, we have to leverage off one another's success, right? And we have to build on top of what others have built. So, and we cannot be we have to create networks where the network will run regardless of whether my business is running or not. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like,
if I had to do it again, there would be no entity, there would be no ICO. We would fund it. We would find other means of funding if we needed funding. There would be no entity. There'd be no bank account. There would be no public listing of anyone involved in the project. There'd be no names. Ideally, nobody in the project would know anybody else in the project either. Now, that being said, that it's extraordinarily difficult doing that because, of course, if you're going to hire somebody without knowing who they are, it's tricky. You have to find other ways. It's going to take a lot of creativity.
Okay, but this is the thing, Chris, is that when you're building in an open source way that's on chain and verifiable by everyone involved, incentives have to be aligned. Obviously, from my experience, they naturally happen. Where even if you've never met the person, if it's only a moniker or a key exchange, right? Mm-hmm. You will learn to trust that person because of their proof of work. At the end of the day, their proof of work, if the code works, then we move forward. If it doesn't, dude, and let me tell you something for all entrepreneurs listening out there, because I've been through many of, I haven't been through the shitstorm you went through with Equibit, but I've been around enough to know what to look out for. You want to look out for people that waste your time. If they're like, oh, we want to build something, smells like a Fed, but they waste your time, ignore them, okay? They will tell you that they're going to do something and they won't do it. They will always be the first ones to arrive and the last ones to leave. Keep an open eye for that one. And they will suddenly just appear. They will just appear. Like the weirdest shit will happen where you're just walking down the street and they will appear.
Oh, and they're there.
Oh, and or you're in an airplane and they're sitting right next to you talking about esoteric topics in crypto that only you know about. Oh, shit.
Oh, what a chance coincidence.
What a chance coincidence,
no, it
right?
wasn't.
Oh my gosh.
Targeted.
If I had a nickel for every time that shit has happened to me, man. So when it comes down to this, Satoshi gave us the way forward, guys. And it's really simple. It's capitalism and it's proof of work. People will show you who they are by how they work and what they deliver. If someone comes into crypto with like a boomer mindset of I understand in your instance, like you guys were pioneers, but now in we're dealing with blockchains that are like really fucking robust, like Daro. People will simply just come and offer value. You won't even have to tell them. This is the crazy thing about this new type of development and startup that's happening in crypto that is open source, on-chain, interoperable, decentralized, and anonymous or private, is that you don't have to tell people shit everyone is almost like we're all on the same page, and people just add value. And there's no central planner, and it's really spontaneous order happening of minds coming together, and everyone's just adding value. And it's almost like no one has to coordinate with anyone else. It just happens. Now, there are ways to coordinate with people, and that's another conversation that we can talk about in the future. And I'm actually part of a project. It's one of my side projects, like we saw a new way of coordination, of human coordination, using proof of work as the means by which we signal for attention. So by not just by proving your work, but by spending energy, we signal for attention, and we better the signal to noise ratio. But that's like a new way of like gaining attention on the internet. That is something that I've been working on the side for a while. We can talk about that if you want in the future. But that's what I'm but I want to come back to the topic of what you did, and people watching this are going to be very inspired by what you did, because
well, there's a happy ending to this story, or hopefully there's
nobody wants corruption anymore. We don't want to live in a corrupt world. We're sick
had
of
enough.
It, man. We are sick of it. We do not want that. And if we have
even the awake among us, I think there's still a lot of corruption that goes on that we still don't know about.
100%.
And there is, especially with recent events with the whole pandemic, I think a lot of people are waking up to the true evil in charge of this world. And I don't use that word evil lightly. I'm talking about people who view other human beings as, as beasts of burden or food.
Wow.
I think Doug Casey used to say, you're either a milk cow or you're a beef cow. And
I'm a bull.
Yeah, that's what you want to be.
Get the horns, man.
Mess with me, get the horns.
Fuck you. Yeah, 100% all day.
On that point, so after, Equibit was just a smear on the wall, my wife and I, we went, we had gone to Switzerland to try and save the company because we needed to get away from the Ontario regulators. The Swiss regulators they looked through the whole thing, and they even gave us a written letter saying, yes, finish your pre-mine, operate as you want.
Nice.
We are not going to waste our time messing around with you. We love what you're doing. Nice. Unfortunately, we couldn't save the company. But we came back to Canada, and after a little downtime, because, there was quite the emotional roller coaster having to fold up a company I had just spent the better part of 4 years building up and working on. Then I got angry and I filed some lawsuits.
Nice.
And, you government bureaucrats messed with the elite of the elite financial professionals. I'm not talking about, the guy that sells you mutual funds at the bank or shares of Apple at your stock brokerage. I'm talking about the guys that, the biggest shareholders in the world, the CEOs of company, the board of directors. When they want information, they want an answer to the question, who do they ask? They ask people like me. Yeah. Because I'm the one who goes in and audits their companies and tells them what's what.
Nice.
And so one of those things I learned is document everything. And so with what we had in terms of emails and text messages and file logs, there was more than enough there to prove that something untoward was going on.
Get them.
And
nice.
So I lawyered up, and we slapped CSIS with a $120 million lawsuit. That is so far sticking because
nice.
We named 3 people in that lawsuit: CSIS, the developer who either stole or sabotaged, destroyed the code, and one other developer who joined the company, was over the moon that he got the job, and then quit like 2 weeks later. and said, "Oh, in his exit interview, he told us, well, it turns out you guys are good people, and so I can't work here anymore."
Oh, wow.
And that's not something you normally hear in an exit interview. So, all this stuff stank to high heaven. We put it together into a statement of claim, and off to the Ontario Superior Court it went. The developer the Russian developer, well, let me back it up a second. So when you charge somebody in a civil court case in Canada, you get 20 days to respond. Now, you can also file something called a notice of intent to defend, and you get your extra 10 days. Now, the Russian developer couldn't even write a statement of defense. And so we noted him in default. And when you're noted in default, what that means is that all of the allegations made against you are assumed to be true.
Wow.
So,
okay, so look, a lot of people watching this are like, well, aren't you guys anarchists? I'm like, yes, we're anarchists. But before crypto's a great set of tools to give us freedom, peace, and prosperity. But before crypto, people died and bled to give us the freedoms that we have right now. The fact that I can create a corporation or a limited liability company in many countries in the Western world is because someone in the past died and bled so that I have the right to create an entity, a legal entity, even if it's the socialist government law that we are all under right now for dispute resolution. Someone still fought and bled for me to be able to have a limited liability company so that I can build something and not be completely responsible for the burden of this business. Does this make sense? So like so yes.
And the
legal system is important.
Yeah.
It's important for people that are even anarchists and libertarians. It's very important for us to not be dumb about the law. We need to know that these tools
what tools
exist.
you have available to you.
Exactly.
And it's not an endorsement of the system if I step into their ring and see if we can have about a fisticuffs here.
Right.
So far, I have them in the corner and I'm pounding away on their head because not only did the developer not file a defense, but the government filed a notice of intent to defend and then didn't show up with their defense.
Wow.
So they asked for the extra 10 days and they couldn't even do it. And I think 9 months after that, they show up with a 2-page, or really 1 page, because 1 page is the cover page. There's nothing really on it. The second page basically said, yeah, we don't know anything about this.
Wow.
So that was the defense that the other developer filed, and he got his in 20 days. You're the government of Canada. You have how many hundreds of lawyers working for you and millions of dollars in your budget, and you couldn't find the time to write a 1-page defense and show up on time with it. So of course, that's not what they're doing. They're destroying evidence is what they're doing.
Okay. So where is the process now? Will there be a verdict? What's going on? I mean,
that it's working its way through the courts at a glacial pace, which is exactly what the system is designed to do. Right. You're not supposed to win. You're supposed to die of attrition. But I'm still here. I'm doing okay. I've obviously saved money before I did any of the Equibit things, so I'm okay. I can keep going here. It's not going to stop me. And I don't need, my wife and I, we fled Canada, about 6 months into the COVID-19 pandemic. So, we're pretty free and clear and loving life where we are. We have our 2 kids one was born just a few months, about 6 months before the COVID-19 pandemic happened. And then the other one was born during COVID. So, unfortunately, I don't think either of them are going to ever know a pre-COVID world, but we're doing our best to keep them safe and sound and sane. But so at this precise point in time, the developer who stole or destroyed the code has been found guilty. So we have that one in the bag. The question the judge has for us is this really a $120 million case? And so at this moment, we have a professional business valuator going through everything that we've done to come up with that figure. And, you know, I do business valuations as well. I've done business valuations on companies, you know, that are many orders of magnitude bigger than Equibit. And $120 million is small potatoes. That's compared to what we were about to do.
Yeah, it takes 200,000 users for like a crypto exchange to become billions of dollars worth.
Yeah.
So all it takes is 200,000 users. That's it.
Yeah. And not only did we have a coin that had a high likelihood of having legs when we finally released it, but we had also built a proprietary enterprise grade wallet. And you see a lot of them out now, but we did this in 2016. We were the first company on the planet, as far as I knew, to actually take an HSM, a hardware security module, and interface it with a crypto wallet. We were the first ever to do a Bitcoin transaction signed by a hardware security module.
Like you did, like the digital rights management chip, as a means to sign the keys.
These are very esoteric devices. The vast majority of people have never seen one, let alone even know that they exist. But they're typically used by the military to encrypt their communications.
So is this like trusted computing?
Kind of. It's a box. It was a server looking box, but it wasn't a computer. It was like a really big ledger wallet. But even a ledger wallet is not a proper hardware device. It still does its operations in software. A hardware security module, the key is actually the chip. And so it has sort of like like a programmable chip. And when you generate the key, the chip configures itself to be that key. And then the ability to send commands in and out of this hardware box to sign or something or encrypt or decrypt something is all handled through user access management. And so with a device like this, you can build a multi-user wallet where you can grant and revoke access to that private key at will. And that is what an enterprise needs in order to run their own crypto treasury. And these wallets are just coming out, they've just started coming out in the last couple of years.
So you guys created this device, or is it something that you guys just acquiesce into your crypto?
Well, we bought the device, but the device itself at that moment in time, nobody had used one as a crypto wallet. We had only theorized that it would be possible because people are using them to do the same things that crypto wallets did already: encrypt, decrypt, and sign. So like when you go to like Let's Encrypt and you buy an SSL certificate, that certificate is signed by one of these hardware security modules owned by that company, Let's Encrypt. And the reason why they do it that way is because, of course, the employees of that company have to be able to be shuffled around without you having to constantly regenerate that private key. Because, of course, in this situation, that key is your business. If you lose that key or you destroy that key, Let's Encrypt all of a sudden has to cycle every one of their SSL certificates out in the marketplace at that point in time, because all of a sudden they have to invalidate all of the old SSL certificates and reissue them on this new key. So doing this in software, that's what you would have to do with the software key, because once you give somebody a software key, you can't take it back. They can copy it ad infinitum. But if the key is hardware, I give you access to that hardware. And then if you don't work for me anymore, I take that access away. And I never actually have to change the private key. And that is the real strength of using an HSM in a multi-user environment. Cool. That's where they shine in crypto. If it's just a personal wallet, you don't need anything quite so grandiose as an HSM. But in a multi-user corporate treasury environment, that was we saw that as the perfect solution. And it turns out we were right, because now there's all sorts of companies doing this now.
Did you hear
and one of them recently called Curve, sorry if I can just finish this. Curve just sold to PayPal for a rumored $200 to $300 million. So if you go back to our claim damages of 120 million, you know, it's small. We're not asking. I think we're not claiming for anything.
No, it's not unreasonable.
Outside of I don't think I'm being unreasonable. Now, I mean, if we get 120 million, that's going to be one of the largest civil judgments in the history of Canada. It's not really a country like the United States where you get like these big multi-billion-dollar judgments. That sort of thing doesn't go on in Canada, but it's possible the CIA was also involved in taking us down. So depending on what information we can beat out of the Ontario Securities Commission and CSIS and everybody, you know, that we can subpoena, if it gets there in this Canadian case, there could be other lawsuits that jump out of here.
So have you heard of a company actually they even have their own coin. It's called Rivets, RIVETZ.
I don't believe so. No.
So they were, the guy behind it is like the trusted computing guy, and he created pretty much like similar to what you were just describing, using hardware for key management. They had their own coin. And what you're asking, I don't think is unreasonable, because last time I checked on that company, they had like only a year, and they had an valuation over 25 million, and they barely had like raised their seed round. So yeah, and they had just gotten started, and it was evaluated like over 25 million at that time. So
we were way ahead of our time.
Yes,
we were way with that. So the manufacturer of the device is called Thales, THALES. And so we had one of these Thales HSMs, and it was funny because when we were trying to raise money, one of the selling points of our company was like, yeah, we built this crypto wallet out of an HSM, and nobody's done this before. We think this is the perfect solution to bringing, you know, big companies into the crypto realm, because now they can do what they need to do from a control standpoint. And, you know, so in our deck, we had pictures of this, but the investors had no idea what it was or what they were looking at, because very few people in the world have ever actually seen one of these things. So they didn't even know what they were looking at. So they're like, yeah, it could be cool, but I don't know what this is. Was most of the answers we got about that product.
Wow. So are you guys, is the business still going then? Equibit, is it still going?
Other than the lawsuits, no. The company has
about resurrecting this idea in a more like modern way, using more modern technology now that we have, you know, newer blockchains. And
well, personally, I would prefer to not have the heat. I'm involved in some other things now that I would rather focus my time and efforts on, not crypto related. And you know, the experience has kind of soured me for wanting to actually work in crypto, because as soon as you're doing something big and important, you've got a huge target on your back, and you get to the point where you can't trust anybody, and it's not a good place to be, because you know, you don't know if you're turning away somebody legitimate or not, and you don't know, you know, what to think of people, and you wind up becoming very isolated.
Yeah, I'm not doing anything big or important, guys. Just letting you know, nothing at all.
Yeah. So I think, yeah, you know, being a guy who comes out and interviewing people, that's good. I think somebody who's running, you know, a multi-billion-dollar exchange, you know, watch yourself, because you know, if they can't come for you, they're going to come for you in other ways. You know, they'll try and get people into your company, you know, to take it over or subvert it. And, you know, who knows, you know, those people may have been with you from day one, for all you know. One thing I did learn, though, during my time there, and this is before there was such a big push for AML KYC at every exchange, one of the things I learned, and we got to talking with a few of the blockchain tracing companies like CipherTrace and Chainalysis. One of the things that they mentioned to me in a presentation was that exchanges are the best mixers. And that's because they batch their withdrawals. Right. So if you wanted to obfuscate the source of your Bitcoin or any, surveillance coin, I guess, for lack of a better term, just deposit them into an exchange and then withdraw them again. But then they've muscled all of the exchanges, whether or not there's any securities on them or not. They've muscled them all into doing AML KYC, and they want to KYC all private wallets now, or as well as they can. And of course, to anybody in the industry, they know that they're just trying to decipher the UTXO pool. They want to know who owns every unspent output on the Bitcoin blockchain. And once they get far enough along with that project, and they're going to use the exchanges to do that, then, whatever's left, they'll just throw that on the FATF blacklist.
Yeah, well, by all means, the way I see things is like, I don't care. Like, let them do that.
Yeah.
By all means, waste your time, because
run it through a Tumblr and get it into Monero or Pirate Chain.
Everybody,
if you haven't already,
is already far ahead in doing other things.
Yeah.
And even in crypto, even in Bitcoin itself, the development within the Bitcoin protocol and what people are experimenting with the Bitcoin protocol itself, it's set in a way where government law and governments are invited by all means to get involved, because it's not that transparent cryptocurrencies are running away from government. Arguably, they were created with the intention of outcompeting everything that the bureaucratic system does and doing a better job at it. So by all means, please try it out. Please mess with these technologies. We want you to, because you will see how you're probably going to need to get another form of discipline, go to another career, because crypto's here to eat your lunch, whether you like it or not. And it's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's only a matter of time. And when it happens, I just had one of the biggest market makers in crypto history here on the show, Jack Liu. And he says that when hyper-Bitcoinization happens, it's going to happen within 24 hours. And I completely agree with him. We don't know when it's going to happen, but he said, the S curve, that we all talk about.
Yeah, it'll be like a reverse hyperinflation.
Yeah.
Once the powers
the part
that be
goes up is going to be like 24 hours, he says. And I completely agree.
Yeah. Once the powers that be have gotten comfortable enough with Bitcoin, they feel that they have enough surveillance, i.e. transparency, installed into that system, they will moonshot Bitcoin. They will come out all at once, all in favor, all in support of Bitcoin. All of the big banks, all of the big regulators are going to come out and say Bitcoin, Bitcoin, Bitcoin. But the other half of that sentence is going to be and nothing else.
But that's the thing. These same people, their game plan is to say Bitcoin, 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 but they're going to lie to you. And they're not going to want you to use Bitcoin. They're going to want you to use second layers, or they're going to want you to use an exchange that they control. Yeah. They can't control Bitcoin, even if it's open and transparent, if things are happening on chain. If things are happening on chain, it's game over for them. They don't have access to.
Well, that's why there's so much institutional. That's why there's so much institutional interest in the Lightning Network, is because they know that the Lightning Network is not going to disintermediate them. The Lightning 100%. Network is built on intermediaries with massive amounts of capital in them. And that is the perfect spot for a bank to insert itself and say, well, look, I'm already set up. I have, a lender of last resort. I have all of the client connections. I'm just going to add a Bitcoin line in my online banking app now. And look, it works so great. It's so much faster than an actual Bitcoin transfer, because hey, it's Lightning, and you can do micropayments or streaming payments and all of this, and it will work, and it will be very convenient. but you will never have the keys to your own Bitcoin. And they may even make it so that you can never actually withdraw your Bitcoin any more than you can get your hands on an SDR.
Right. And here we are just talking about finance, but Bitcoin and these technologies extend to data. And the real control grid that they're building around people comes down to data management and the centralization of big tech. The fact that they own and they surveil everything. If we can strip that away from them, even if it's in a transparent currency and it's transparent protocol like Bitcoin, if you take that away from them where now you own your own data, game's over.
Yeah.
Where you take away
Bitcoin properly used takes away their ability to profit from being a middleman. It doesn't take away their ability to surveil, though. But something like Monero or a pirate chain takes away both, and you they will be existentially opposed to either one of those forever.
So the way I see this,
but that's why you need them, because if anything is going to flip Bitcoin, it will be a privacy coin.
Right. The one thing though is that privacy coin needs to be able to scale as fast as the SHA-256 network is now. And we would have to look into the way that it is scaling itself. Because if a protocol needs to scale in a way that is vertical like Ethereum, and Ethereum scales by this is how Ethereum scales. Pretend that they have a bus station, a bus company, and the more clients that they get, Ethereum needs to build a bigger bus and a bigger bus and a bigger bus. That's dumb. The way Bitcoin scales is horizontally, meaning you have a bus company, you get more clients, you don't build a bigger bus, you just buy another bus and you buy another bus and you buy another bus. That's a secret to scaling in crypto. And that comes from, computer science. That's the way Google, Amazon, Facebook scales. So that's the way Bitcoin is made to scale. Privacy. And
you made an interesting point. Yeah. I think, that could be a scaling strategy for something like Pirate Chain. If they want to access a ton of infrastructure to secure the coin and promote the coin, maybe a hard fork to SHA-256 is what they ought to do, because now all of a sudden every Bitcoin miner in the world can mine Pirate Chain.
100%. And I agree with you. Actually, me and my buddies had a meeting with Ed Bugos about this. I'm going to throw this multi-million-dollar idea. We had a meeting with Ed Bugos about this, and we called it the Bitcoin Aftermath. And we're like, what if there was a coin and we called it the Bitcoin Aftermath? BAM was the name, the acronym for the ticker symbol. BAM, right? It's a zero-knowledge proof by default at the protocol level privacy coin that eats away the computer power of the Bitcoin network. So that
there you go.
The moment you scale and you want to take in a lot of people, and maybe even if you want to do smart contracts on this blockchain, because we have Bitcoin script, I'm just saying you could do this. You could just start eating all of the Bitcoin miners. If you show that you're more profitable, miners through market drivers will come. So that's the thing, is like when this S curve happens and we enter hyper Bitcoinization, we have to have a network of computers ready to be able to jump. And at this moment, it's the SHA-256 miners. So it's for that reason that I'm like, that BAM idea wasn't that bad, Yeah. And I'm really happy you came to the same freaking conclusion that we
right here. About. You got it on tape.
Gosh, and it's one of those things you talk about. I had Mr. X on the call, Ed Bugos on the call, and we talked about it with this entrepreneur out of Europe, and it just remained an idea. But guys, grab this idea and run with it, because the technologies are there, right? And we need to think about how, yes, we need to take care of banking. We already did that with crypto, with cryptocurrencies, but we also need to take care of what Chris has, valiantly fought for, which is like to free ownership, right? Of the ownership, your intellectual property, by fighting the good fight, in Canada for, changing the game in securities.
Don't get in the way of the creative process. I mean, creators have enough difficulty as it is with all of the naysayers talking in their ears all the time. Oh, and sometimes that's happening in their own head too. Oh, this isn't going to work. Oh, you can't do this. It's not, something's going to go wrong. And it's hard enough creating anything at all without the state trying to screw you at every opportunity. So, crypto creators have it doubly hard. They have it harder than any inventor in the history of the world, except for maybe, Nikola Tesla.
But the cool thing is that now you're really harnessing the creative potential of all of humanity for the first time. And crypto moves extremely fast, right? When SBF went down with FTX, he didn't look for outside investment to take care of what was happening. He looked over his shoulder at Binance because only Binance was capable of moving that fast. We are capable with our technology to move faster than they can. So keep that in mind.
It could have been like the savings and loan bailout that happened, because the savings and loan scandal in the late 80s, a bunch of savings and loan companies, they were going bust, and it wasn't the Fed that came in to bail them out. It was other savings and loan companies came in to resolve that. And so we almost saw that happen with FTX. But I mean, Changpeng is not an idiot. I'm sure as soon as he looked at the balance sheet, he was like, whoa, I'm not touching this.
So my theory is that he just came in just to look at the books.
I have a feeling.
Yeah,
not like Kevin Leary, who gets on TV and brags about all the due diligence he did on FTX before putting his money in. And he's like, oh, it's absolutely squeaky clean, guys. Sure it is. Sure it is, Kevin.
Yeah, sure it is. Look, the future of exchanges are going to be on blockchains that have other purposes but that single exchange. And then you will never have these problems. Entrepreneurs out there listening to this need to realize that we have the technology right now to make that happen. We have the technology to create, even if it's within a transparent blockchain, to create exchanges using zero knowledge proofs in a way that allow you to deposit and withdraw, where you can keep the people in charge of the exchange, or even the network, the algorithm in charge of the exchange. Everything is kept accountable. Like, this will not happen if you use the blockchain. If you use the blockchain, situations like Mt. Gox and FTX will not happen. We have the technology. You should never, ever depend on externalities to a blockchain. Use the damn technology you're investing in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And a little encouragement or preference of mine, if any exchange operators are out there, stop charging listing fees to actual crypto developers. If you're getting flooded with 10,000 ERC20 tokens a year, 99% of the time those are going to be securities. Charge them a listing fee. But an actual crypto developer, they're not launching a security. They're launching a cryptocurrency, and they really do need your help. And they don't have money. They don't have big investors or big ICOs behind them to do these things. And so, but those are really the projects that are going to keep you alive, is because, you can't gorge yourself on ERC20 tokens and expect to stay afloat, because most of those, if not all of those, are not going to have longevity. The ones that are going to live on and survive and thrive in this new ecosystem that we're building are the cryptocurrencies. And you're going to get some value out of it just by making a market in it. And it's really a zero risk opportunity for you whenever those come along. So they should be fast tracking them onto their platforms and start making a market in them, because it's going to help this community. It's going to help develop. It's going to help the developers get what they need to do done. And you're going to see better coins come out. The upgrades to those coins are going to come out faster, because, everybody's helping everyone else.
That's right. Guys, you have to leverage off each other's success. Like, if you're using Bitcoin as a financial instrument, that is not crypto. Yeah. That's exactly what FTX did. No, you use crypto for crypto. And in the future, exchanges are going to be on chain, and these technologies exist. It's a huge market opportunity for everyone watching this.
Yeah, we have to play the long game. We have to play the long game, and we have to play to win. And that was one of the unfortunate shifts in the mentality I saw in a lot of people in the crypto community, especially around 2014, from 2014 to 2018. Everybody, and I don't think that was necessarily crypto, because we were just invaded by all of the worst elements of the securities industry, pump and dump scams left, right, and center. And everybody was focused on, look at how much money they raised and how much money they raised. And what did this coin do? What was the lift on this coin when that happened? And so everybody is chasing press releases and new exchange listings and ICOs and hype. And that's a fool's errand. You're just creating bubbles. Everybody's going to get wrecked in the end. And you're just encouraging people like Sam Bankman-Fried to come in and fuck us all. And then blame it on you.
Yeah, 100%. Guys, we never needed them. These are banksters, and they were using crypto as investment instruments. Yeah. FTX was not a proper crypto company. It wasn't. And anything out there that pretends to be one, the question you have to ask is, are you on chain? If you're not, then you're not a proper crypto company. And let's be real. If you're not on chain, why? Because I can't prove reserves, bro. And proof of reserves is the new proof of work. And if you can't prove reserves, then you're not really on chain.
Well, it is. I think, there are some things that the regulators, do right. And one of those things is, do you have the reserves? And, unfortunately, if you're a guy like Sam Bankman-Fried, you can say, well, yeah, sure, we have the reserves. It's just in a bond from a related party run by my girlfriend.
It's ridiculous.
And
I mean, he learned from his family, right?
Yeah, exactly. Gosh. And if you're Gary Gensler, head of the SEC, and you just took $1 million paycheck under the table from this guy, you're like, yeah, sure, fine. I'll look the other way.
Wow.
Why not? Hey, here's a monopoly. Have that too. I like how this is going.
Yep. So again, guys, that was not crypto. And thank you for sharing your story, Chris, because you literally were there in the struggle of being a crypto entrepreneur, on developing new technology, building something on chain. Granted, I would have said build on a chain that already exists. You actually went out and created your own commendable endeavor as well. Like I said, I would have said, hey man, use a crypto that already exists, build on that. So not all the responsibilities on you or your business, but you still went for it, man. So,
well, we didn't really have anything. We didn't really have anything to work with at the time.
Because they didn't let you. But you're right. They didn't let you. That's why we had the Bitcoin Civil War. So the Bitcoin Civil War was exactly about that. It was about, can entrepreneurs build on this blockchain and do whatever the fuck they want? Or are we going to have some technocratic central planners tell us what we should do or what we shouldn't do? And unfortunately, it seems right now that the ones that have been winning because they have been helped by the lizards are those technocratic, deep state influence central planners. These technocrats, they came into Bitcoin and told Bitcoiners, you can't scale the blockchain. You can't embrace Bitcoin's computational power. You can't experiment with Bitcoin script and do smart contracts on Bitcoin. You can't store data on chain because we're going to call it spamming the network. You can't do this. You can't do that. It's as if the government were to come to Chrysler or to all the car companies throughout the world and say, you can only produce 20,000 cars a year. But Chrysler can only do 1 million cars a year. What are you talking about?
You can only produce cars the way you made them in 1970.
Exactly. Because you know what? Because we need fairness. We need to have a decentralization marketplace.
Yeah, we need rules.
We need egalitarianism.
So we don't need rules and innovation. Rules are for sports
100%.
And nothing else, because what are sports? Sports is a bunch of people following the rules and duking it out according to those rules.
Right. So I was part of the big side of the Bitcoin civil war that to this day still fights for, no, let entrepreneurs like Chris experiment with the blockchain as much as he wants. Let him create whatever he wants. Don't get in his way. That was literally what we fought for and what I fight for to this day. for SHA-256 Bitcoin that is completely free and open to entrepreneurship. You can come in and you can build whatever you want on chain. And if a miner processes your transaction, who am I to tell the miner not to process it? Who are you to tell the entrepreneur not to do whatever is profitable for them and for the network? So it's that's literally what we talked about here. And it's a shame. It's sad that someone like you had to go out elsewhere when we had the tools and we have the capabilities all along to do it on the original Bitcoin. Shit, even Vitalik, they never needed to create Ethereum. Ethereum was part of this whole thing of you can't build it on Bitcoin. Bitcoin's only for the coin aspect of Bitcoin. Don't even think about, get concerned about thinking about the computational power of Bitcoin. Oh, well, Satoshi gave us a Bitcoin virtual machine, like the Ethereum virtual machine. Oh, pay no attention to that. You don't need to learn about that. See, they did not want people to know what Bitcoin was truly capable of. So they pushed us away. All the entrepreneurs like yourself were pushed away and told not to build here. And guys like me were like, to this day, fuck you. No, they can build here. And so we had the civil wars, we had the hash wars, and we're still fighting. But we're fighting in the open market now, competing. And in the meantime, all these crypto anarchists have been creating these privacy coins like Darrow now. That is like, okay, well, what if we do this? And, which
seemed to be the only coin that was immune to the FTX fallout.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So we know which coins the banksters aren't messing with.
That's right. It's like, please, like all the networks that I love, I'm at the point where I want these bankster exchanges to please delist them. Like, please delist these coins, because I know how crooked you guys are, and I don't want my precious networks that I care for so much to be at all dependent on these exchanges. Because the way I see it, Chris, is if you're a network, if you're a crypto network and you're dependent, if the growth of your network is dependent on an exchange, you're off to the wrong start. Like you're off to the wrong start. The growth of your network should be fully dependent on the proof of work, on the actual entrepreneurship that your network is capable of, and on growing.
Well, and an attack on the
economy.
And an attack on the network should be viewed as an attack on the money itself. And you know, historically, counterfeiters have been punished pretty severely, and in a lot of countries over a vast amount of history, counterfeiting money would get you the death penalty. It was one of the worst things that you could do because, you know, for a long time, people understood just how much damage recklessly expanding the supply of money could do. This was common knowledge. I think it was like, you know, as early as like Isaac Newton wrote one of the earliest treatises on sound money and the gold standard. And if you read it, it still is perfectly sound reasoning for this. And, you know, we can't just, you know, money is too important to be left to government. It's not so important it must be handled by government. There's nothing so important that the government needs to be given a monopoly over it. You know, look at all of the industries that garner the most complaints. What are the industries that most people are pissed off by? Finance and healthcare. And what industries are most controlled and regulated by the government? Healthcare and finance. This isn't an accident, people. This is by design. You're being screwed by these industries because that's the industries the government is using to screw you.
Guys, the tools are there. One of the analysts of the Crypto Vigilante said something to me in a DM the other day. And he said that Satoshi gave us Bitcoin. The money aspect of Bitcoin was the fuel that he used, knowing very well that the outside world of fiat will never fuel this invention. So it had to create its own fuel, just what you're saying. Because money is the first problem that we have to solve. And then on top of that are all the other problems like Chris has been trying to solve with securities, ownership on this new world, right? The fact that we, like I said earlier, like really what you were going for was not your keys, not your security. And I love that. Not your keys, not your property. I love that. And I think ownership on the blockchain, on chain is the future. I think that owning our data, we need to get rid of big tech. We need to outcompete them. We have the means to, so let's just do it.
Yeah. And I need to issue a quick correction. It was Nicholas Copernicus who wrote that treatise, in case anybody's looking it up right now, trying to read it.
Copernicus, it's like a Copernican revolution.
Yeah. He was a smart guy. Not only did he figure out that the earth orbited the sun, but he figured out why sound money was so important way back in 1526.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, smart guy.
Well, we're living in the middle of a Copernican, how do you say his name?
Copernicus.
Copernican revolution as well, with money. And, at the Crypto Vigilante, we have these conversations back and forth with the analysts of like, yes, money, everything you just said, Chris, you're 100% right. Money is the most important problem that we have to fix. And that's why we're fixing it with crypto. But we're starting to have this other conversation. It's really Mr. Z and I and Jeff, like really starting to nitpick at this concept of big tech and data. Mm-hmm. You control data, you control the world. What crypto solutions of the future will tackle this problem? Because all financial institutions in the present are fintech companies. So if everything you do is within a digital prison, how will you combat that when they own everything that you do online? Everybody watching this right now is on their phone, addicted to social media, on the internet. They're literally surveilling you at all times. So, okay, how can we have the benefits of this peaceful cooperation that we have online through social media, while at the same time owning our data and not having that data used against us? So that's really something that we've been really, Jeff, Mr. Z, and myself actually really been picking at in our conversations. And I think that's one of the reasons I really want to talk to you, because you're like probably one of the first people in crypto history to really butt up against the man when it comes to ownership on chain. And thank you for doing that, man.
Unfortunately, I'm not on the receiving end of the lawsuit. I'm not going to jail for securities fraud or defrauding investors or anything like that. I'm actually prosecuting the government successfully, which is kind of nice. Awesome. That's a story. That's a story you don't hear too often, which is probably why the Canadian media is dead silent on this. I couldn't get a single media outlet in all of Canada to report on this story, even after we had secured a default judgment against the first guy and basically proved our version of the events to the court. Nobody will cover this story. The only journalist in the entire country, and this includes the alternative media as well, the only journalist that gave me any kind of time was Dan Dick's Press for Truth. And shout out to Dan Dick's. If your listeners want to watch an interview where we go, we take a deep dive into all of the details and the story, that's where you want to go. Go to Press for Truth, find that interview and watch it. And, you're going to have your eyes open into just, how shady and corrupt a lot of these bureaucrats are. And I'll have that
interview and the link in the description below for you guys.
Oh, perfect.
So you guys can watch it. Yes.
And I wanted to touch on something else you said. So, you mentioned, the fabric of society and the social contract. And,
yes,
a lot of people talk about that. But they talk about them as sort of these vague things and, the fabric of society. What is that? It's our contracts. It's our agreements with one another. It's how we relate to each other. And, it more often than not, a contract involves money. And so our money is a crucial part of the fabric of society. And if you just hand that over to a government that has never demonstrated that it can be trusted with anything, let alone the fabric of society, you get what we're dealing with right now. And it's that simple, guys.
We can keep talking for a couple more hours, Chris. This is awesome. I do want to have you back because, let's just have you back and just shoot it up because, I really jive with you.
Yeah. I'd love to.
Any words of wisdom to any entrepreneur who are listening to this and saying, you know what? There's a huge market here. I have the tools right here that are open, on-chain, interoperable, decentralized, and even private by default. And I want to jump in. What would he say to them?
Believe in yourself, because when everything fell apart and I was the only man left standing and I had to decide what was I going to do, and I could just walk away, beaten and bruised but alive, and just say, I tried my best, but it didn't work. I could have done that, but I said, no, I believe, that something heinous was done here, and I am not going to let that stand. You
got the lizards rattled, Chris.
You gotta cultivate a certain fire in your belly, and you gotta combine intelligence with wit and wisdom, and you have to listen to every emotion you have. Don't run away from, don't let any one of them take over, but don't rule any of them out either, because they all have something to teach you.
That's right. That's a great note to end this with. Chris, thank you so much. Do you have any links or anything where people can follow you, or anything that you think people should follow that you would want to recommend?
Well, one of the important things about being pursued by spies is not leaving an online trail for yourself. So I have abandoned all social media. However, I will give you the link to the Dan Dix interview. We'll also give you a link to a very detailed statement, which is an accounting of all of the facts and events I experienced through my time working on Equibit. That was actually, it did make its way onto Zero Hedge and went viral about a month ago. So some people may have already seen that. That certainly rattled their cages. Their greatest fear, the greatest fear of these people, one of the things I learned, their greatest fear is exposure.
All right, let's expose them.
So let's expose them. You shine the light on them and let them know we see you and we know what you're doing.
Amen. That's beautiful. And that's one thing that I want to kind of mention real quick is at the Crypto Vigilante, like, we champion privacy coins, but I personally, not my team as much, but me personally, I really champion the transparency of the Bitcoin protocol, because I think Satoshi gave us a disinfectant, an honesty machine that is a truth ledger. And sure, yes, there's surveillance there, but that's what we want them to use. We want to keep them accountable. We need light. Well,
in a world without government, privacy coins would not be necessary.
Exactly.
Bitcoin would have been enough.
Yeah, you're right. So I definitely want to talk to you again. I want to, especially if there's any follow-up on this case, because I want to know what the lizards are up to next. I want to know what they respond to you. And I really, really hope and pray you get your money. When we get them into discovery, we'll see how big of a file they get. If it's just a few empty folders and sheets of paper, and then they'll be like, "Oh, this is all we got." That?
Oh, well, that's going to be coming soon.
Oh, nice.
Because the first domino has already fallen in that case, and really now it's all on them at this point, because now we've proven our version of events in court, and their leg to stand on is shrinking very quickly, and they've said absolutely nothing in their own defense at this point.
Beautiful.
Still over a year into this, they have not tried to really defend themselves, other than just to, you know.
They're so inefficient, man. It's ridiculous. it's like what takes them years, like Bitcoin does in 10 minutes. It's crazy. Yeah. So thank you for again having the integrity and the balls to come out and share your story, because your experience is nourishing everyone watching this. So until we talk again, it's been a pleasure talking to you, Chris.
Appreciate the time, Raphael. Thank you.
Awesome, guys. And like Lucy and Jeff Berwick say, peace, love, anarchy.